We're doing a mic check. Reese and Ebert, can you hear us and can you talk? We just want to make sure we don't have any feedback going on.
This is Devin Reese.
Councilmember Reese and Ebert, we just want to do a quick check before we get started.
Yes, Councilmember Dare, I'm here.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Ebert, can we hear you okay?
I've been trying to promote her, ask her to unmute her microphone.
You might be muted.
Okay, she's muted, she's here.
Okay. We'll go ahead and proceed, and when she can speak in, we'll bring her in. Okay? We're on a time limit, so we got to roll. Are you good to go?
Mr. Chair?
Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and bring the order of Truckee Meadows Water Authority, the Board of Directors, on Wednesday, March 20th, 2024. I do want to just say that we are on a 11:30 time crunch because this room will be used by somebody else at that time. So for all of us that like to talk a lot, and I'll include myself in that motion, that we need to keep on track for that reason. So we do need to get started. Let's go ahead and begin with roll call.
Anderson?
Here.
Andriola? Present. Dare?
Here.
Dewar?
Here.
Alternate Ebert? For the record, she is present and muted.
Thank you.
Hill?
Here.
Reese?
Here.
We have Zimmerman?
Here.
Adelia? Present. We have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much, and we are going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Leo, would you lead us? Put you to work, since you'd only work a couple times a year, you know. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We're moving on to public comment. Do we have any public comment, or you have something to read, don't you, because we're on Zoom?
I don't have, setup, sorry.
Okay, no worries. So with that, any public comment? Okay, awesome.
So just a question, Mr. Chair. I mean, so are the participants on the phone? Is that what you're saying? Or are they on Zoom?
They're on Zoom.
I think what he was referring to is, don't we have to read how members of the public can participate?
I don't have something written up.
Oh, okay,
Prepare one for next time.
okay.
Okay.
The agenda has the instructions on how to enter Zoom, and so did the website, so I don't think we need to read it. It's
Okay, great.
clear enough.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, we are moving on to possible board comments or acknowledgements. Moving past that, nothing online. Okay, we are looking for a approval of the agenda.
So moved.
I have a first and a second. Any,
Sorry, Mr. Chair?
yes,
One more time? Who first
Andriola was first,
and second?
was Ms. Dewar. So we have a first and a second. Any other conversation? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I, Councilmember Reese.
Thank you so much. That passes unanimously. We still have not heard from Ebert, so we're not, as of now, we're going to say she's not here. And,
Here, she's just, remaining muted.
okay, for my pleasure, I would like to make sure we can hear from her, so we know she's there. So, that's something important on Zoom. So let's go ahead and move on to approval of the minutes for the February 21st, 2024 meeting of the Tumwa Board of Directors.
Move to approve.
Paul Anderson first. We have a second from Ms. Hill. Thank you so much. All in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful,
I, Councilmember Reese.
wonderful, wonderful. Are we moving into our attorney-client? Now we're doing it at the end. We do that right now? Okay, we're going to go into our attorney-client at this moment, and then we will be back shortly. We will not be long. Thank you so much. on time, 10:41. Okay. We're gonna bring this back to order, and we're done talking about Andy, so there you go. Water supply update with Bill Hawk. Come on down, I can give it. It snowed.
I know you can. Morning, Bill House for the record. So, when I was here this time last month, we talked about snowpack being about 75% of normal. And that although the season was kind of winding down, anything could and still would happen based on, history of the Sierras. Well, we got that massive storm that we were talking about. I said one or two could put us right on track. Snowpack, as of Monday morning, was 98% of normal. You can see here in green. So that storm added about 7.5 inches of water to the content to the snowpack in the Tahoe Basin, and basically pushed levels to 100% or more of average. And you can see it's strikingly similar to 2009, as I pointed out last time. We could have a 2009 year, and there we are. So great storm. And so with that boost in snowpack, the runoff forecast has improved significantly as well. So the latest projections are showing Lake Tahoe will completely fill this year, as will all the other upstream reservoirs. So there'll be even less beach at Sand Harbor this year. Now, last year we had a really big runoff. Tahoe rose about 6 feet, but it started out a half a foot below the rim, so it didn't completely fill. So as you can expect, there is no snow drought. There is no drought in the Sierra Nevada. And,
Tumble board, you can say you did your job, and you made it so there was no drought, and we have water.
and I will just end with our region's extremely well positioned from a water supply perspective for at least the next 2 to 3 years, and normal operations again for Tumwa. So we'll have normal river flows this year, all of next year, and well into 2026. So
That's fantastic.
great news.
And it should snow this weekend.
It looks like a pretty decent storm starting this weekend and then for 4 or 5 days. So yeah.
Any questions? Thank you so much. Keep making it snow. We are moving on to information report on American Flat Advanced Purified Water Demonstration Facility. Danny Ronter and Angel LaCroix. She's not coming. I know, but she's not joining them. I was told.
Good morning. This is Danny Rotter, Director of Engineering for the record. I've got with me Angel LaCroix. Lydia Teal's in the audience if we need any questions from her support. I'll tell you that this project of this magnitude, there's a team that would fill this whole room of people. And the Reno folks, I know there's a couple online. We've got Dustin here. I know you guys had an update from your staff. It's been just a great working environment from the whole team. And so just because we're up here doesn't mean that we're anybody special. But I will tell you, Angel LaCroix is the project manager for Tumwa. And so she's been herding all the cats and trying to keep everything on track, making sure that as the tweaks go through, the consultants are on board, and that we coordinate with operations to make sure they're getting what they need. So she's gonna run through this, and she's really been the head of this project here, coordinating all this. And so I'm proud of the work she's doing. So she's gonna take it away, and I'm here for any questions, and Lydia too.
Yeah, thank you. So Angel LaCroix, Tumwa engineer for the record. I'm going to give a brief overview of the American Flat APWF Advanced Purified Water Facility informational update. And we're going to go through basically everything in a timeline fashion, so you can see where we've been and where we're at now, and then kind of where we're heading with some key milestones to make you guys aware of those coming up. So the 30% design was received in June, so mid last year. Following that, we did a 30% value engineering, that's what the VE stands for, workshop with a bunch of people, a lot of great ideas generated from that. We had approximately 110 different alternatives to reduce costs and bring more value to the project. So we've been working on implementing all of those into the final design. We've been working on critical equipment selection, that's gonna wrap up this month in March. We've been selecting ozone and UV equipment, which we've decided are very important to the project to get in the final design ahead of time. So we're bringing those vendors on board. And so we've selected already an ozone vendor, and we're still negotiating with a UV vendor. 60% design is scheduled to be delivered to us April 25th. So that's coming right around the corner, followed by another 60% value engineering workshop. And then In the summer, we're going to be getting some concept designs presented to us from a number of vendors that specialize in education center exhibits. So this is that front space when you first walk into the facility. There's going to be a learning center there. And so we're bringing in multiple vendors to pitch their concepts, and then we'll be selecting one to proceed with us through the design. 90% design and subsequent value engineering, which will be focused mostly on constructability, will take place in November and December of this year. The final design issue to construct, we're anticipating April of 2025. So that's a pretty tight deadline. On permitting activities, we've been quite busy, as you can see from this slide. There were 5 public held meetings to kind of bring the community members in and get their feedback on the project. We sent out over 12,000 postcards, and also 30,000 emails were sent out. Notifications were also published in the Sunday edition of the RGJ so that we could try to get as many people as possible to these meetings. And then we've also been, because this is a very complex project, we've been working with the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection to do coordinating meetings, and we've been bringing them along for the ride with us. It's the first IPR project in Nevada, so it was important for us to bring them into the design early on. So we've been engaging early and often with them, working through the nuances of permitting and what the final operations is going to look like of the facility between City of Reno operators and Tumwa operators. We are required to do a CUP and an SUP for City of Reno and Washoe County as a part of this project. So those applications and meetings are going to be taking place later this summer, and we're working on the applications starting like right now. And then there's a phased NDEP permit process that we've worked out with NDEP. The first submittal package will be delivered in August, which will include all of the requirements for them to issue conditional approval of the construction. So it was important for us to bring them in and get this game plan together. So that's going to be happening in August. We'll submit all the stuff they need for that. Phase 2 will allow us to inject in the aquifer, and that's going to take place in 2027 when we get all of the information that they need and are comfortable with us and the water quality to inject into the aquifer. And then phase 3 will be the final permitting step, in which they'll allow us to extract from the aquifer and put the water into the Tumwa potable water system in 2028. In terms of construction, so we've got a milestone for a go, no-go decision. This is probably important to you for in January 15th of next year. Following that, we will be seeking approval of GMP1, which is an early procurement of some critical pieces of infrastructure and equipment that could otherwise delay or extend the project construction duration. So we want to get those going sooner rather than later, and we'll have the design in a place where we're comfortable making those purchases. So following approval of GMP1, we would start that procurement process of those pieces of equipment. And then GMP2 construction, we would be seeking that in May of next year after 100% design is issued. And that would then trickle into the notice proceed being released to the CMAR. I've listed a few major construction completion milestones here. There's a lot of work to be done here, but key points, the CF DAF facility will kind of be finished construction soon. Sooner than the other pieces of the project, and that's the improvements at Risworth. So coagulation, flocculation, dissolved air flotation system will be completed in August of 2026. The APWF, so that big main treatment facility, we're anticipating March 2027 completion, and the pipeline would follow soon after in June of 2027. The facility startup and commissioning, we're anticipating November. We would be ready to start testing some of the water through all of the systems. And then in 2028 would be final completion of the project, allowing us to both inject and extract the water. And then finally, this is the last bit, we were gonna provide an update on the operations plan. So as you can imagine, this is a very complex project with multiple agencies. We've got Tumwa and City of Reno working together, where we had recurring meetings throughout 2023 to establish a framework and a plan basis for an O&M agreement between the two different parties. So we've been doing a lot of work laying that foundation. That has since gone to legal review, so we've got the structure and everything dialed in. And now we're gonna be working on filling in that O&M plan with all of the details. And then we've been working on process control. Again, this is a very complex project. There's 2 treatment plants that need to communicate with each other across the street seamlessly. There's another facility, 7 miles away. So there's a lot to talk about there, and we've been bringing City of Reno operators together with TUMWA operators and other departments to ensure that they're included and their voices are heard in the project. So we hosted a 2-day process control workshop last month where we got a lot of great ideas kind of dialed in, and that helps to inform a more seamless design later on. Lydia's gonna go up next talking about enhanced source control, but essentially that's part of the permitting process. So we're gonna start kicking that off late this month, where we're really looking at what's coming into RISWARF and developing an enhanced source control program, because essentially that water feeds this advanced purified water plant. So we need to make sure that there's nothing weird coming in. So she's gonna be working on that. And then we are also hosting process control workshops at the 60% and 90% design milestones to finish developing standard operating procedures, alarm responses, all of that will get fleshed out in the more detailed design. And then we're hoping to have an O&M plan final draft kind of ready and buttoned up, most of the pieces of that buttoned up by November. And we've built it in such a way that should changes be needed, there's gonna be some flexibility for us to adapt that later. So as we start to run the facility and we need to make some alterations, City of Reno and TUMWA has a mechanism to do that. That's all I got. Thank you.
Well, let's go ahead and open it up to some questions or thoughts. Sure.
Hey,
Vice
thank
Chair
you.
Dewar.
Yeah, thank you. Great presentation. That was really succinct, and it really makes us understand. I think you said water in 2028 potentially. So that's fantastic. I just wanted to mention something I did at our previous meeting at Western Regional Water Commission, and that's that last week, the City of Reno Council voted to do 2 things. One is to dedicate $80 million in cash to this project, and then also go out for a $70 million bond to support the project. And one of the things, that's $150 million coming from Reno, and I know there's a big chunk coming from TUMWA as well. I don't recall the total number. Do you have
The
that?
split is 70-30, so TUMWA's portion would be about 66 million.
And we're providing 150. So just so people know, I mean, that's very big numbers. And then earlier we spoke about that ultimately there may be a benefit to Sparks as well. I mean, they're part of TUMWA. And they may be ending up diverting, TUM Wharf is pretty much getting to a built-out stage, or the fact that we don't know what's going to be allowed to be discharged into the river. So there may be a need for even Sparks to move their discharge or their sewage treatment north as well. So, just some things to think about. But I wanted to bring this up too, because during that discussion, it was discussed that you were going to expand the education center portion of this building that you just showed.
Yeah, there's gonna be that front space at.
And then
right
you
when
said people are going to compete to be that vendor to set up the educational displays. So I'm really pleased to hear that. We saw some phenomenal, when we went on our trip to California.
Yeah, ours is gonna be better. No,
Seriously? Is that really?
I don't know, actually, right? I mean, that's the goal.
Well, one of the things I mentioned, yeah, so they're really good displays, interactive, very cutting edge as far as what an educational center would look like, whether it's holographs or different type of interactive displays, those kind of things. And a drinking water station too. Let's not forget that. But one of the things that we need in the North Valley is we don't currently have I'll call it a community center. So a meeting space. A lot of times people will go to the airport instead, to use their meeting space. But I think it would be good to incorporate in this building a sufficient meeting space so meetings could be held, whatever those look like, whether it's CAB meetings or NAB meetings or other kind of community meetings, those kind of things.
What do you think the maximum occupancy would you?
I guess I'm thinking 50 or 60, but I don't know, 65 maybe. That would be a typical NAB meeting room where you have the board and maybe 40 other people in the room. But I think that's something you should think through, but I don't know what you already have planned.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty flexible at this point. We do have a square footage allocated for that space. We were anticipating on having a conference room with perhaps a soft wall that we could open up that would extend into the lobby room, should we need to kind of have that flexibility of having a closed conference space, or also open it up and maybe doing an event kind
Yeah.
of a thing.
Well, exactly, right? Could be other types of events, but I think if we're building something with tax dollars, that we should have it multi-use as possible.
Yeah,
And there is a real need up there.
yeah, that's a great feedback. I'll bring that back to the design
Okay.
team and we'll make sure it's a requirement.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, actually, I just want to give a shout out to the entire team that's been working on this. I think I really got to truly appreciate what y'all are doing and the complexity, the scope. I was able to go to that water reuse symposium last week, and what was amazing is we had people from all over the country that were coming and talking to us about the project that you all are working on, and talking about how important it is and how watched it is by other inland locations like ours that are trying to figure out what's the best practice? How can you make this work? So I just want to say to all of you that have been involved for 20 years or 2 months, just thank you for all the work that you're doing. Phenomenal thus far, because a lot of the things, getting excited here.
Are you Italian?
Partially, yeah, partially. But one of the things that they kept talking about was the communications portion of it, and that's one thing I just want to say to the communications team, well done, because you guys have been already engaging the community in the messaging. But yes, to Member Doer's comments, the one thing that seemed to be a common denominator was a robust learning center, place where you can bring in folks and introduce them. I think Ms. Rigdon put it that, you're allowing them to come behind the fence and see what's going on, and that interactive ability. And I truly think for it to be a wonderful success, not only for our region, but potentially our country, is to have that investment in the visitor center. So I just want to say, well done. And then also at the very tail end, something I heard over and over again on the tours was that they were so thankful they had room to be able to make adjustments as they kind of got to the end of the project, because they started realizing, well, this worked in this location, so it's going to work here, and oh, never mind, it's not, or it's doing the opposite of what we thought. And to see that, they had the ability to make flex changes to the program, and for you to mention that the tail end, that's what you're going to be doing there as well. I want to say well done.
Yeah, I actually come from an operator background, so I absolutely understand when you're in the field, it's a little bit different than in the engineering.
I want you all to know that Paul doesn't get that excited in our city council meetings, so. Ms. Ebert, I believe you wanted to say something?
I just want to say water is life.
Councilwoman Ebert, are you online?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks, Councilmember Dewar, for bringing up the need for a community center in Ward 4. And I did want to just add that we currently use the North Hills Library for the majority of our NAB meetings. But if we are going to make a space large enough that we could use potentially for NABs, it would actually need to be a little bit larger. If we could have a space that could accommodate like 75 to 100 people, that would be beneficial. I mean, if it's truly something that we could use as a community center, community resource, for the North Valleys, it would need to be a little bit larger. If that is something that you guys would be willing to include in the plans and accommodate, which would be fantastic. But I just wanted to, let you guys know more specifically what kind of need we have out here. And just wanted to share that. So thanks for calling that out.
Thank you, and I do believe that probably sounds like as we go, there'll be a lot more conversation regarding
Put
that.
together what that might
Yeah.
look like and decide if it's feasible or not.
Because then
But-
because with Telma being a part of that as well, I know Reno has their own voting they'll do, but I think as us we'd love to see it be the best that it can be and actually be able to talk about it, because we're not agendized for that. I just want to remind all of our people involved.
Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Thanks.
Just to follow up to, when we're just building the Moana pool, is another example, is a pool, but we set up a meeting room. I did have them come out and measure for 65 people, and I do think it's a little undersized. I think it's set up more, it's probably a little undersized, and we may not be able to get to the full size, but the point of it is some kind of meeting space that's bigger than a conference table, I think would be very, very helpful to the whole community. The other thing I wanted to mention on your exhibits is that I have had a chance several times to tour a facility in Iceland that is about volcanoes. And it has some amazing interactive displays, one of the best I've ever seen anywhere I've traveled. The other best one was in Springfield, a whole educational center set up on Lincoln. And so both of them, in my mind, were cutting-edge exhibits and interactive, and just some things to look at when you're taking the proposals.
Yeah, we've pulled together a number of example projects to give inspiration to the project team, and I think if we could get maybe those.
Yeah, I'll
actual
send you some links
places-
if you want. Okay.
Yeah, that would be great.
Thank you. I'd like to say that this is exciting, and I don't know that anybody will look back. I mean, right now I look up into the hills and what was created for us, and we got to come in and help manage somebody who really thought ahead. And we're in that moment in creating this. And I say this, and I mean this with all my heart. Reno, kudos to you guys for stepping up. I'm glad we as a group get to be a part of that. Without question, Sparks will continue to watch and find out where we fit in. We're a region. What happens in our region affects our region. This advanced purified water, I just think generations will look back and look at what we've done. And I give you guys to our staff. This is so important. Water is life. You can get excited, Paulie. Go ahead. There you go. Thank you. And well, it's just that important. And sometimes we just make decisions and go, and we don't pause for a moment to go, look at what we're doing. So it's just very exciting. It's an honor to be a part of it. And I do believe there'll be more and more work along this side. This is just the first of many.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just one more thing. I left this out of my previous comment. The reason this is so important, this is the first in Nevada. And so many communities in Nevada, whether they're large or small, may be able to benefit from this technology, and they are going to want to come. They are going to want tours, whether it's Southern Nevada Water Authority, our rural communities. This is a technology that is replicable throughout Nevada, and Nevada is the most water-short state in the country. And so it's critical that we're doing it, and it's critical that we're sharing it. So thanks.
Awesome. Are you excited again?
I'm excited again.
Okay, go for it, quickly.
No, actually, I just wanted to say for all of us that, especially on the elected side, I know we all have a lot and we're pressed for time, but please engage this team, especially when they're doing public outreach projects. One of the opportunities I had at the airport at Stead was joining that conversation, and I purposefully sat with the most boisterous and displeased crowd. And I wanted to hear what they were saying while they were speaking, before they were speaking, during that time. And what is amazing is we have some incredible folks here, like I already mentioned, but Lydia and John, I'll tell you what, they did an awesome job, and like the dynamic duo. So I just want to say, if you have an opportunity and you really want to hear some of the concerns, and in all honesty, all the ones I heard were genuine fear about the potential. What are we doing? And to be able to hear staff actually articulately address their concerns, and I don't believe anyone left that meeting feeling that concern or feeling worried about what the future holds for water. So I just want to encourage each of you to take part.
I'm going to move us forward because we can keep
I
talking
know,
about
I know.
this. So we're going to move forward. But thank you so much. Is there anything you need us? This is just a report. Okay. We're going to move on now to something that does need our vote. Discussion and possible action on the Tumwa tentative budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025, and draft capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2025 through 2029. Can you believe I just said 2029? That's weird. Matt Bauman and David Digo, thanks for being here.
All right, thank you. If you thought that was exciting, we've got budget stuff.
Yeah, we see your hands move now.
All right. Okay, Hello, members of the board. Matt Bowman, Tumwa CFO for the record. I have with me David Deagle, engineering manager for Tumwa. I'm going to talk about the operating budget side, and Dave's going to talk about the capital side of this. So you have a staff report in front of you. I'm going to walk us through a presentation. I'll move relatively quickly just because we're a little short on time, as I understand it. So maybe save questions to the end, and we'll go from there. I'm going to look for a motion to approve the tentative budget. So we'll get started with our timeline. So how this works, we're here in March with tentative budget and CIP. We're going to ask for approval from this board. Then in April, we're going to take the tentative budget and CIP to Tumwa Standing Advisory Committee. We'll ask them to approve it. And then we'll be filing the tentative budget, we call the state doc, with the State of Nevada Department of Tax by April 15th. Then in May, we'll bring back a final budget. So any changes that are made between now and May, we'll discuss it at the May meeting. We'll ask for final approval of the budget, and then we'll file that with the State of Nevada Department of Taxation. Then in October, we're going to bring the funding plan back to the board. So the funding plan is where we discuss rates, and that's when we decide what our next rate adjustments are going to look like. And one thing I want to point out here with this slide and just emphasize is that financial planning, it never stops. We go from the budget, we wrap up the budget in May, and then we start looking at the funding plan. We're constantly reforecasting. We finish the funding plan, and we're back into budget season. And so it's a really helpful way to do it because we always have updated numbers, updated forecasts, and we can make decisions based on that information. So year round, and we keep it moving. Okay, so let's dive into some of the details here. So what you're looking at is a high-level summary of the budget. We're comparing, in this slide and in the next slides, you're gonna see a comparison of last year's budget to this year's budget. So this year is FY25, last year was FY24. So first thing to point out is operating income, relatively flat. You can see that we're projecting an increase of about $7 million in operating revenue, offset by an increase in operating expense of about $7.6 million. We'll get into some more details here in a minute. The other thing to point out is capital contributions, a bit lower than last year. Most of that is due to like Angel was talking about, the construction and the timing of the American Flat project and updated timelines there and a little bit slower rate of spend than we had projected last year. This is the line item where Tumwa recognizes the contributions coming in from City of Reno for that project. We'll dive into a little bit more here first with operating revenue. So this is where we have water sales, hydroelectric sales, and our other operating revenue. Want to point out water sales. So we're projecting an increase of $7 million or 6% in water sales. What that is 4.5% rate increase, which the board's aware of. That's in June of 2024. And then we're assuming a 4% increase again in June of 25. Although I'll point out that increase will come back to the board in October as part of the funding plan, like we just talked about, and the board can make a decision on that 4% increase. It's assumed in the budget. Not real impactful because it's just 1 month in the budget. We're assuming average weather year here. As you know from last year, weather can play a big impact on our water revenues, and then growth of about 1.5%. I want to give a shout out to Sean Stoddard up there in the crowd who does our revenue modeling and does a really good job with that.
How many years has he been doing that? 60, 70? How long you been around here?
Well, I came over from Sierra.
One of the
I know you
originals.
have. Congrats.
One
Thanks
of
for
the
doing all your work.
originals. And then just a quick breakout, charges for water sales. So as you can see in this chart, the blue section, residential water sales makes up about 3/4 of our total water revenue. Commercial, about 12%, irrigation, fire protection, 13%, and then wholesale, 1%, wholesale being Sun Valley GID. Okay, that's how money's coming in. Here's how money's going out. We have operating expenses. So first thing to point out, salaries and wages. We're showing about an 11% increase. That's made up of a couple things. One is headcount additions. So we have 11 employees that we're adding to the headcount budget in fiscal 24. Last year we added 12. One of the focuses for Tumwa in the coming years will be preventative maintenance. And we've talked about that over the last couple of years, and we're gonna keep talking about it. As our infrastructure is aging, we've got to get ahead of preventative maintenance. And so we have 5 employees of those 11 that are specific to the maintenance crews operations, the operation maintenance crews. Specifically what they're doing is they're working on our tanks, our wells, our pump stations, reg stations. And the other thing, we add these employees and it takes time for them to get up to speed. We have about a 3-year apprenticeship program before they're going to start working on our assets. And so it takes a little time. It's not a overnight fix, but we've been advancing this program and we're continuing to do it in this year's budget. And then we're adding 6 employees across the distribution and administrative departments as well. One thing that I wanted to point out too is when we do our budgeting, we start from the ground up. And so we go to departments, we ask what they need to spend money on, what do they need to do. And then this year, what we did too is we went back and we said, okay, how can we tighten things a little bit here? And so we did defer 2 positions that were originally budgeted. We'll evaluate those during the year. If we think we have room in the budget and there's a need there, then we may add those positions. But again, we won't exceed the dollars in the budget. But I wanted to point that out just as an example of the process we go through with our budgeting. We spend a lot of time going over that. The next section, services and supplies. So this is supplies, electric power, contracts, et cetera. And so we're still seeing some impacts from inflation. We're projecting an increase of about 5% in that budget. And part of that also is increased spending on preventative maintenance, as I just said. So some higher supplies costs in there as well. And again, just like on the headcount side, we did take another round internally and we said, what can we defer? What can we hold off on that's not going to impact us substantially? At TUMWA, we have employees that they want to get things done and they want to do more and they want to improve. And that costs money, but we also talk about what we need to do within our budget in order to sort of have a good, progression of increase of costs that is manageable through our rates. And so we did cut about $700,000 from this budget after the first round. The next section, non-operating revenues and expenses. This is where we have our investment income and our interest expense, which are the largest items. As you know, we've been reducing our total principal, total debt outstanding, and you can see in this chart over time that continues to be reduced. That helps our interest expense. You can see in fiscal 25 about $2 million lower, and part of that is due to the refunding that we just did in 2024. That saved us on some interest costs. The last section of the income statement is capital contributions. So in here we have grants and then we have connection fees, which are the other large items here, our developer contributions. And so want to point out developer contributions. These 2 line items are the largest categories for us of cash contributions that we get for connection fees from developers. And we're projecting pretty consistent income here. You can see the numbers. Will serves pretty flat year over year, and then facility charges, which includes area fees and supply and treatment, our WSF fees, slight decrease there. But we're seeing in fiscal 24 a little bit of an increase, and we're projecting that through the end of the year than what we had in fiscal 23. And that's what that chart shows down below. That line represents the combination of those 2 items over the years. And so you can see we kind of plateaued in fiscal 21 and 22, a pretty decent drop in 2023, and then sort of an uptick in 24 and leveling out, if you will, in the budget for 25. And then the last item, this is what I mentioned before. This is where the contributions come in from City of Reno on the American Flat project. And so decreasing a lower rate of spend there, which means less coming in from Reno as part of the 70% contribution. We talk a lot about ratios, and one of the important ones that we talk about is debt service coverage. And so what that is operating revenues minus operating expenses. That gives us our net revenues, and then we divide that by senior lien debt service, and that gives us our ratio. And so we have some targets that we want to hit. The top line that you can see there at 1.5 times, that's what's required by TUMWA's policy. The line below is 1.25 times. That's required by our bond covenants. So if you'll recall during the funding plan, when we were talking about rates, we're dipping into our rate stabilization fund in order to keep those rate increases to a lower level. And so what we're projecting here does not account for that, and that's why we're below the 1.5 times line projected for 2025. Using rate stabilization funds, we would hit that, and so we would be at that target. And then also as we start to catch up with our revenue, we're expected to exceed that as we talked about in the funding plan. And again, we're gonna start looking at that right away, and we'll be talking about it again in October, looking at a long-term projection, where things are at. And this obviously, there could be continued rising inflation. We could have lower than budgeted water sales that could affect this, but also we could have higher than budgeted water sales. If Bill turns the spigot off and it stops raining for the rest of the spring, then we might see some higher water sales, and that'll increase the revenue, which helps debt service coverage. The last slide that I have is cash flows. So you can see net change in cash in green there. It's pretty consistent with last year. The chart is showing the blue line at the top is total cash. The yellow bar is the total cash that's required by our policy. So you can see that we are exceeding that. We're about $20 million higher as projected. And I think that these projections are conservative as well. I think we'll come in a bit higher. For example, fiscal 24, we were projecting a net decrease in cash of about 23 million. I think we're going to end up pretty close to zero. And part of that is we tend to not spend as much on capital as we project in the budget. And so that saves us on change in cash. And so I would expect the same thing for fiscal 25. But bottom line is we're meeting our policy objective there on our cash flow. That's it on the operating side. I'm going to turn it over to Dave now to talk about the capital improvement plan.
Thanks, Matt. David Deagle, Engineering Manager for the record. As you'll see here is a nice summary of customer rates, hydro, reimbursement, developer fees, and some highlight projects that we'll just kind of generally go through. Customer rates, we have tank rehabilitation. I know we've talked about that in the past, and we're continuing to move forward with that. Next slide will kind of explain that. We have Chalk Bluff and Glendale. It's aging. We're getting close to, the useful life of the equipment, and so there's quite a bit of investment we're going to be making in this next 5-year fiscal plan. And then the rest of that, want to highlight the South Hills and 7th Street booster pump stations. Those are two capital replacement pump stations that we have on the plan. And then if you go over to reimbursements, you'll see that we have 6 developer booster pump stations. So that's what we're going to be mostly busy with throughout the year. And then the other highlight in the developer feed side is the Lazy 5 booster pump station, where it's going to be moving water into the Spanish Spring zone. Pretty critical for what we're doing in the north there. And then you have the Highland Reservoir tank. Now that's a mixed funded. We have half of it is because we need that redundancy in order to do improvements to the Highland Reservoir. So we need that storage similar to Hunter Creek so that we can operate while still rehabbing. But also it adds storage to that area and that zone, some needed storage for the future. So move to the next one. Okay, this chart, and my understanding is you guys have seen some of this before, but what you see in this chart, what we're showing is kind of the growth model that you've seen in Reno since the 1950s, and water kind of shows that. You see the boom in the 1990s and the 2000s. That infrastructure right now for the rake stations, we're really trying to tie up the rest of the 90s, and we're moving into that big peak there in the 2000s. We're starting to hit a few of those rake stations. So they're reaching their end of their life, and we're having to rehab those, get those rake stations out of the road, fix some corrosion problems that we're seeing. So we have a lot of work there. The wells and the pump stations are similar. We're in that same range. We're in the 90s right now, working our way. The tanks were in the 2000s, and we've been doing a little better on getting on top of that, but still a long road ahead of us. And you'll see in the 2010s, we did a lot less. And so our projection in the 2020s, we have already done quite a few, but we're projecting out 100 new projects, 102 new projects, and we're tracking with about 143.
All right. Thanks, Dave. The other thing on this slide is just we talk about preventative maintenance, and you can kind of see that wave of aging infrastructure coming, and we've been talking about that. Danny's been talking about that in the past, so. So that's it, just the summary takeaways. Water sales are going up, operating expenses going up by about the same amount. Non-operating expenses down, that's good. Pretty flat on capital contributions. Our net change in cash is lower, although I think that's conservative and will probably be close to zero. And 5-year capital spending is increasing. I did want to point out real quick and then take questions, just big thanks to so many people at Tumwa for putting this budget together, and the finance staff, Sophie Cardinell, Sandra Tozy up there. I mentioned Sean working on the revenue modeling, and then all the department leads and their staff for coming in a short amount of time, crunching the numbers with us and helping us put together the budget. It's a lot of work, but everybody does a really good job. So that
Thank
will take
you.
questions.
I do want to say, for the record, Commissioner Andrea Led did leave, just for the record, make sure that's on there. Ms. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's great that we're adding some maintenance staff. I'm wondering on the 6 additional staff, where are they going to go? I don't quite see it.
Yeah, so we have 4 employees going to the distribution maintenance, or distribution, well, I guess distribution, Andy's group.
Yes.
Distribution side.
Yes.
Where is he? So we've got staff going there, and then we have 2 administrative positions. One that's gonna help kind of in the purchasing and engineering side, and then one in the technology side as well.
So, okay, so that's the total 6,
Yeah.
then the other
And then the 5 were on the,
maintenance.
on the operations maintenance side.
Great. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Ms. Stewart?
Yeah, I just had a quick question on your slide on the debt coverage. I wasn't really clear what you were showing with the line going down between our policy and a stated
Yeah.
policy. I wasn't sure if you were saying we were dropping there, or what were you saying on that
Yeah,
slide?
so what this slide shows is that we are, we're above our required bond covenant
Yeah.
policy, but without use of rate stabilization fund, we are projecting to come in lower at 1.4 times coverage
Okay,
than what our policy, our financial guideline policy is.
and again, that is 1.5?
Yes,
So but the blue line is our actual?
that's what
So
we're
that's been as
projecting.
high as almost 2, or
Yes.
1.75?
Yes,
And so I guess, but you're saying without the use, but we are gonna use, right?
yes.
So it's not gonna be this?
It's gonna be right at 1.5. We'll use the minimum to get to 1.5, and then eventually we repay that over time. And that's, so when we look at our funding plan projections and we're talking about rate increases, we kind of balance that rate increase to an amount we thought was appropriate with an appropriate use of rate stabilization fund in the next 3 years. And then finishing in fiscal 27 and 28, we repay the rate stabilization fund
Okay.
while still keeping 1.5
Okay.
coverage.
And what is our indebtedness now that this would apply to?
So we have, well, the total's gonna be close to 300 million, but it's a mix of senior lien debt and direct borrowing, some DWSRF loans, and that continues to get paid down.
Is
over
that
time.
pretty standard? I mean, are we always carrying about 300 million, or?
No, it's been going down over time, and Tumwa was started 100% leveraged with 100% debt, and so over time, we've been decreasing that. We were close to 500 million at the start of Tumwa, and actually went up for a little bit to continue to fund operations, and then we've continued to come down, albeit
We went into debt to fund operations, is that what you said?
to fund Tumwa. Well, I'd say operations. I think probably and that
Other
was back
capital.
in the early 2000s. Other
Yeah.
capital, most likely. Yeah.
Okay, so, but where do you see that landing? I guess did we do a 10-year projection on that, or is that?
Yeah, and so it's going to continue to decrease over time, with the exception of unless there's an opportunity to borrow at a rate that makes sense,
Sure.
and taking advantage of that.
So where do you see it landing? Like 200 million, 250?
Over 10 years, I don't recall where we'll be after 10 years, but that's
All right, pick another
about-
number,
That's
but I
about
mean-
right. 200 million, I think, is about where we're at,
Is
because
where-
we're just under 3.
I mean, we talked about this at Reno too, and we have paid down a ton of debt since this particular council last 10 years came on. And when you pay down debt, that means that you can't do all the either fun things or things that you need to invest in elsewhere.
Right.
But I didn't know sort of our big picture. We were landing at about 500 million is probably where we'll bounce around.
Yeah.
But I didn't know 250, 200.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
200 to 250 is
Okay.
probably a good spot for
All right,
Tumwa
thank
to
you,
land
Mr.
in.
Chair.
Thank you. So real quick on this, what it does show to our public, so I interpret it, is that we properly raised only what we had to our population, and we utilized the resources we have, because some people are like, well, you're just raising and raising. We only raised what needed. And people need to understand that if we actually drop below this because of the debt ratio, we actually cost us more for the money we have, period, because we lose out. So it's kind of a complicated conversation, but people need to know we only borrowed what we had to. We're utilizing rate stabilization we created to make sure that we did not bring woe to our community. And so just something, I want to interpret what I think we just said out loud. I do want to just, a final thing is just the preventative piece. If I could challenge us, whether I get to be here for the next 5 years or whatever the heck happens in my future, preventative maintenance is crucial, because we don't like the price of some of this, but replacing these things is astronomical, and that we cannot afford. This we can do. What replacing things is not. And so if there's ever a goal that needs to continue to be on there, is this preventative maintenance and making sure we have the staff, which is part of what this is all about, to be able to do that. So I just want to challenge us forward as we look at this. Those are things that are important. So with that said, we're running out of time pretty quickly. I know we have one more thing to get to. I am looking for a motion.
Make a motion.
A second to approve the budget.
Let me go ahead and read it. Move to approve the tentative budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025, and the draft capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2025 through 2029.
And we'd have a second, Ms. Stewart?
Yeah, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, Councilmember Reese.
And Mr. Reese, I apologize. I didn't give you guys a chance to say anything on this. Was there something you wanted
No,
to
if
say?
I had wanted to say anything, Mr. Chair, I would have interjected, but
Thank
you've
you
done an
both.
awesome job of keeping us on track.
Okay, I apologize. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, all in favor? I think we got an aye. It passed unanimously. Thank you very much. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our final discussion item, and then everything else will move pretty quick. This is discussion and action and possible authorization for general managers to sign the interlocal agreement between Tumwa and the city of Reno for cost share of wastewater sampling from the Reno Stead Water Reclamation Facility. And now we have, well, you're not Lydia either. I'm way confused here. Are you Lydia too?
Yes.
Oh, then we got another Lydia. That's what it is. So, very good. So Lydia Teal and Dan Newbold. Okay, very good.
Okay, well, thanks. I'm going to keep this very quick. This item is for an interlocal agreement between City of Reno and Tumwa for wastewater sampling at the Reno Stead Water Reclamation Facility over a 2-year period. University of Nevada will be actually conducting the sampling and putting together the reports, and that's through an already funded agreement through WRWC. And this is actually a part of Enhanced Source Control program that is actually a regulatory requirement for Nevada Advanced Purified Water Facilities. And it's also important because we'll understand what type of chemicals or constituents are present in the wastewater influent, what isn't fully treated and might pass through to the advanced purified water facility that we will be required to treat there. So again, just very crucial component to the entire advanced purified water program and a requirement for a permit. City of Reno did approve this last week at their board meeting, so I don't have anything else to add for that, so I will turn it back over to you.
Any questions? And I apologize. Now I know exactly who Lydia Teal is. You're famous. So, with that said, I don't have any questions myself or thoughts. Do I have a motion? Do you want to
Yeah,
make a
I'll make a
motion?
motion, and we're on item 10, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll make a motion to approve the interlocal agreement between Tumwa and City of Reno for cost share of the wastewater sampling from Reno Stead Water Reclamation Facility.
Can I have a second? Ms. Hill is our second. Any other discussion? See none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes unanimously. On to General Manager's report. You do not have 5 minutes according to my schedule.
Go back.
Go back. Awesome, good job. And I would say this, public comment? Seeing none. Any board comments? I have one board comment I would like to say to the board. Thank you all so much, and thank you guys for jumping online. This is such important conversations, and your time is crucial. With that said, we are adjourned.